The budget keyboard space has been getting more and more saturated. What was once a pretty underexplored area has now been populated with excellent options from the likes of QWERTY Keys, Wuxue Studio, and countless other designers. But today marks the entry of Chosfox into this space as well. What was once a studio only known for switches and small accessories, Chosfox has finally made its debut into the custom keyboard space with the CF81, a very promising budget 75% keyboard. But before we get into the board, let's take a look at these switches Chosfox sent as well. These are Summer Limes, a silent linear with a POK top housing. Now we can get to the board. First off is an accessory box including Chosfox screen stabilizers, an Allen key, and half of a coiled aviator cable. Here is a switch and keycap puller, and the other half cable. Finally is the board itself, wrapped in plastic with a polycarbonate plate, PE foam, and hot swap PCB installed. Here are also our gaskets. CF81 is a 75% gasket mounted board. We have one hot swap south facing PCB with no layout options. This has a knob and a daughter board and utilizes VIA. As for plates, a flex cut polycarbonate plate is included, but an FR4 plate is also available as a separate add-on. We have two colors, black and white, with black being $126 and white being $132. In the PCB are the included stabilizers looped with 205 grade 0 and BTC. Allowed on the plate foam, the flex cut polycarbonate plate, and in here go stock Summer Lime switches. Now for the gaskets. We get two options for thickness, one to use on top and one on bottom. I'm going to go with the thinner gaskets on the top and thicker on the bottom. With the inner assembly done, we can connect the daughter board, insert the inner assembly, and close the case. I'm going to install GMK DualShot 2, and lastly, install the knob. Let's take a listen. The sound profile with DDs is actually quite pleasant. It doesn't really sound foamed up, if that makes any sense. It's nicely high pitched and the volume isn't too loud. This is likely thanks to the no-cut 1.6mm PCB, but the hollowness is very apparent and you can even tell with the Summer Limes. I also wanted to test a non-silent switch with a weaker sound to see if the board would hold up, and it actually kinda did. With Alpacas, I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting a more plasticky sound, but it actually had just a bit of that quiet and lively sound you get with Alpacas in premium top mount boards. The plate foam is extremely dense, so I think it's contributing to most of this sound profile. Unfortunately, since Alpacas are quieter than DDs, they can't overcome the hollowness the board creates, so the overall profile just ends up a resonant mess. You can imagine my surprise when I found that the board had integrated force break, but it seemed to be almost completely ineffective, which was really disappointing. However, when I added my own extra force break on the bottom case, the pinginess and hollowness seem to go away almost entirely, so if you can spare just a tiny bit of tape, you can forgo the case foam. It looks like Chosfox will have to go back to the drawing board for their force breaking gaskets. As for feel, there's not a lot of flex, but there is quite a bit of bounce. The cut plate keeps the typing feel unresistant, but actually getting the inner assembly to move takes some effort, and it's possible to bottom out, but not with normal typing forces, so ESD protection isn't really necessary. Honestly, I'd completely forget the case foam and just use plate foam if the sound isn't up to your standards. I have no comment on sound for the Summer Limes, as they're just as quiet as any other silent switches. Of course, they feel kinda mushy because of the internal dampener, but it's nowhere near membrane. Their stock smoothness is really good, and they feel nicely lubed even though their factory lubing is pretty minimal. Cracking it open, you can see the silencer is pretty much the entire bottom half of the stem. Overall, Summer Limes are great as a stock switch and have pretty fair pricing at 55 cents a piece, but they're not going to offer a whole lot of noticeable difference from other silent linears. The design is very plain. The side bezels are different from the top and bottom, with the top bezel being the largest. There's some small filleting around the edges, which is nice. The side profile is pretty underdeveloped, with the top and bottom cases seem visible all around. The bottom case has just a tiny bit of indented curvature, but that's about it. There's nothing on the back except for our recessed USB-C port on the left side. The bottom has a Chosfox engraving. The knob feels alright, but not as smooth as the QK75. And ultimately, the price point of the CF81 makes it a competitor to the QK75, with the base being cheaper than the cheapest QK75 config. So let's make a few comparisons. For starters, the cheapest QK75 still included a stainless steel knob or iron badge and a stainless steel weight, while the CF81 is full aluminum. However, the CF81 has a full RGB PCB, while the QK75 doesn't have an option for RGB. Understandably, the QK75 has better material quality, but the difference isn't anything deal-breaking. Neither has really great foamless sound. The CF81 admittedly has a better included cable, and decent stabilizers are included with both, which means the only other tangible difference is the included carrying case. Otherwise, it's really a decision based on sound, feel, and design, which are going to be preferential and ultimately up to your specific needs. So while the CF81 is by no means perfect in terms of its sound and design, it proves to be a solid budget offering. The CF81 marks Chosfox's second independently designed board, with the first being the L75, so it seems they've inadvertently set the bar for value pretty high. And while the QK75 outperforms the CF81 in terms of its options and versatility, with some proper tinkering, you still can't go wrong with the CF81, and I'm excited for what boards Chosfox has in store for the future.